He said he'd lost his job, but he used my personal data, our money, and every ounce of my trust to create a secret existence filled with fake freelance clients, new debts, and hidden relationships, leaving me to pick up the pieces alone when the truth finally came out. If you'd told me 3 months ago that I would be double-checking every credit card statement and Wi-Fi log in our own home, I'd have called you paranoid. Now, I call it survival instinct. My name is Melissa Grant. I'm 35, a healthcare consultant living just outside Columbus, Ohio. I'd always pegged myself as the practical one, driven, not prone to flights of fancy, the kind of person who sets calendar reminders even for dentist appointments. My husband, Jason, is 40, and until last year he was a project manager at a big logistics company. Steady job, modest ambitions, never complained about the grind. He lost his job in January. Downsizing. I remember how quiet he was that night. How he poured our 2 small glasses of bourbon and just stared at the bottle. "We'll get through it," I told him, and I meant it. We had a little cushion, no huge debts, no kids. Just us, our rescue dog Max, and the faint hum of the dishwasher. I promised him I'd cover things until he got back on his feet. For the first time in years, I felt like we were playing on the same team. At first, Jason pretended to be all in about finding work. He set up a home office in the guest room, filled a yellow legal pad with lists of jobs and contacts, printed resume after resume. I found him scrolling LinkedIn day after day. He talked about interviews that never quite happened. "They're delayed. I'll hear by next week." Recruiters ghosting me. But over time I noticed things that didn't match up. Some days I'd come home early and hear him laughing on the phone, quick to shut the door when I got close. One afternoon, the legal pad I'd bought lay empty on his desk, but next to it was a half-drunk iced coffee and open YouTube page. Google search history was always wiped. For privacy. I wanted to believe he was just ashamed. Not everyone is built for job hunts. Then, the money started to trickle away. Small at first: Starbucks, random ATM withdrawals, Uber rides when his car sat below our window. "Just running errands," he'd say every time. Sometimes he'd claim to be downtown for an interview, but Lyft receipts had him on the other side of the river. I clicked forgot password on our joint credit card app one night and saw a list of payments to random online services I didn't recognize. Upwork, Fiverr, 3 different VPN sites. My best friend Lauren rolled her eyes when I fretted. "Come on, Mel, he's embarrassed. Let him have his secrets. What can he really be hiding?" But I couldn't let it go. Maybe it was the late-night whispers I caught through the door, or the way Jason's phone never left his reach now, set always on silent. The final straw came on a Thursday. I was homesick, wrapped in a blanket, half watching TV, when our iPad pinged from the kitchen. It was a notification for a video call. The username, JR. Then it rang again, different app, same name. The call was declined both times, but I saw him in the guest room, whispering frantically, blue glow on his face. That night I scrolled our Wi-Fi router logs, a habit I picked up after a data breach at work. Among the familiar devices was a new one labeled Asus Laptop Red. We didn't own anything like that. I stared at the logs, unsure if I was spiraling or finally just paying attention. By the next week, I was a version of myself I barely recognized, double-checking, second-guessing, scribbling down receipts and times in the margins of my planner. Jason seemed to sense the air had changed. His smiles were smaller, his movements more abrupt. Sometimes I'd catch him standing in the dark kitchen, just staring out at the empty backyard. One morning as I poured my coffee, I asked about the new laptop I'd seen in the Wi-Fi logs. Jason frowned for a second too long. "Oh, that? Loaner from a friend. Trying out a side project just to stay busy." He kissed my forehead and slipped out before I could press him. The problem with trusting people is you always want to believe their first story. On my lunch break, I started combing through more router logs and old iCloud backups. I found bits and pieces, late-night logins to Zoom and Slack accounts I'd never heard of. Dozens of PayPal notifications Jason had deleted, but which still pinged my email as backup. A cash transfer labeled client work, sent to an unfamiliar handle. In our joint Dropbox he'd accidentally left a folder of PDFs, contracts with electronic signatures, all mismatched fonts and address details I didn't know. Work made it easy to pretend everything was normal. At home, the smallest things set me off. The sight of his closed door, the ping of his phone on the coffee table, the way he never looked at the mailbox anymore. I tried to drop hints. Anything I can help with? Want me to look at your resume again? But he just brushed me off with a tired smile or a snap. Later that night, I heard him on the phone. He spoke quietly, but I caught the words deliverable, PayPal dispute, invoice was flagged. Again, not the language of unemployment. I started a spreadsheet, a private one he'd never see. Columns. Date, unusual activity, explanation given what I found. I took photos of the guest room desk when he left for errands, copied file names I didn't understand. Felt wrong. But was it really worse than pretending, when the gnawing dread wouldn't let me sleep anymore? One evening, Jason stormed in late, the sharp scent of beer and someone else's cologne on him. I tried one last time to break the dam quietly. Jay, I'm worried. Are you in trouble? Are you working again? You can tell me if there's something going on. He cut me off, voice too loud. Melissa, I said I'd tell you when there's news. Can you just trust me for once? Later, I sat on the floor, back pressed to our bedroom door, and let myself cry for the first time in months. By Saturday, I had a folder, screenshots, logs, odd paperwork finds, printouts of our sliding bank balance. I didn't know what it all added up to, only that my life was suddenly a puzzle where none of the pieces fit. And as I stared down at Jason's ever-changing stories and my own shaking hands, one ugly question finally surfaced. Who exactly was sleeping in my house and how much did I really want to know? Спасибо, продолжаю. В этой части отчаяние Мелиссы переходит в действие. Она аккуратно собирает улики, советуется с юристом, выходит на настоящий масштаб обмана, уже не только левый фриланс, а целая вторая жизнь, вранье и финансовая опасность. Все холодно, рационально, с бытовыми и юридическими деталями. Part 3. Piecing together the double life. I never thought I'd be the type to spy on my husband, but distrust, once it hardens, turns daily moments into clues. Even Max, our old dog, seemed to sense something. He kept close to me, watching Jason with an uneasy caution. I spent a sleepless Sunday morning copying every suspicious file from our Dropbox to a flash drive I kept in my work tote. I took screenshots of PayPal transfers, weird Zoom invite emails, and the client contracts he left open on the desktop. Every shred of digital strangeness went into a password-protected folder on my laptop, labeled simply, J Other. By Monday, the pattern was unmistakable. Jason was logging into work and communication apps at odd hours, his Asus laptop read, showing up on our Wi-Fi almost nightly. More invoices appeared, some with fake company names, some tied to overseas payments. A couple of old credit card accounts closed I thought now had new unexplained charges. Our joint savings was down by nearly a third in 2 months. A heavy cold nausea set in. This was bigger than embarrassment or the standard job search shame. There was secrecy, there was risk, and worst of all, there was planning. I reached out to a colleague from my consulting days, Marcy, who'd worked through a messy financial divorce. Am I overreacting? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as we split a scone in a busy cafe. Marcy gave me the most sympathetic look I'd had in months. Print everything. Make backups. If there's any whiff of debt or hidden accounts, get legal advice early, before he does. You can love someone and still need to protect yourself, Mel. She told me about a discreet family lawyer and pressed her card into my palm. That night, I waited until Jason went for a drive to clear his head, and called the lawyer. I laid out the whole mess. The vanished money, paper trails, new devices, digital ghosting. The lawyer stopped me midway. You need to freeze your credit, monitor accounts for new lines or loans, and don't tip him off until you're secure. Make copies, secure passwords, and start separating finances quietly. If you share any property, check for liens or new debts in both your names. I acted fast. Changed my banking passwords from my office computer. Added 2-factor authentication to everything I owned. Pulled my credit report, heart pounding until I saw the number had only dropped a little. Ordered statements from all accounts Jason still had access to, highlighting any anomalies. Later, alone with Max, I read through the client correspondence Jason's laptop left open by mistake. Some emails were job-related, there were clients' invoices, payments, but none matched the resume stories or the applications he told me about. And one email, sent after midnight to someone called Anya Riley NYC, read simply, "Miss you. Can't wait for the real thing." I stared at the glowing screen, numb. There it was. Not just secret work, but secret relationships, secret transactions, a parallel life stitched through our own. That night, I moved some money to a private account and packed a go bag just in case. I understood now. You only really feel the ground drop out from under you when someone's lies threaten not just your trust, but your safety. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting in the rain. In the end, I waited for Jason to leave for one of his supposed interviews and sent him a single text. "We need to talk." "I know." Then I called the lawyer. The events blurred into a sequence of forms, cold calls, signatures. My lawyer guided me step by step. We froze all joint credit cards and notified the banks of unauthorized activity. I separated my accounts and set alerts for any new inquiries or loans using my name. Legal paperwork was filed for separation, with an injunction preventing Jason from taking or moving any remaining marital assets. Jason tried to protest, first denial and outrage, saying he'd never do anything to hurt me. When I quietly referenced the accounts, the emails, the increasingly late work calls, he fell back to claims of just trying to help us get ahead. And then finally silence. The hardest part wasn't anger. It was the fatigue of having to explain things I already knew were true. He moved out 2 days later, taking only clothes, a battered laptop, and his silence. The guest room smelled like cold coffee and anxiety for weeks. The legal side moved slowly. Banks investigated the fraudulent activity and eventually reversed a portion of the losses, but some cash was unrecoverable. My lawyer submitted every backup file and email log. Police took a statement about the suspicious credit activity, but since much was technically earned via unregistered gig work, and Jason hadn't falsified my signature, the case skirted the line of formal fraud. Emotionally, though, the breach was deeper. At work, I became more guarded. Lauren and friends offered support, but some just fell silent, perhaps unsure what to say or where their sympathies should lie. At night, the house was empty and echoing. I disposed of the leftover tech, wiped the router, changed every password, donated spare devices. I deleted Jason's login from every household account. The hardest part was learning not to check for new lies when things grew quiet, not to let trust become another spreadsheet or password to manage. I started therapy, surprised by how hard it was to talk about the practical things. Why didn't I push harder sooner? Was I complicit for not wanting to see? The therapist reframed it. The real breach wasn't just financial, but the slow erasure of my sense of safety and self, the gradual invasion of my everyday. Months passed. I rebuilt a budget not for two but for myself. Max began to relax again, dozing across both rooms like he once did. A small relief. Winning back my life wasn't about recovering money or catching Jason in a lie. It was the quiet, growing confidence of a routine restored, a home emptied of secrets. One day, I found an old note from my first year with Jason, hidden in a drawer. "We keep each other honest." I almost smiled. Now, honesty meant learning to trust my own suspicion, and forgiving myself for all the times I doubted what I'd seen. In the end, there's no medal for catching someone's second life, nor a crowd cheering for the quietly resilient. But waking up and knowing that my future, whatever comes next, is once again my own, that is enough.